Naseem, are you in the Auckland office? Are you in the Auckland office, Naseem?
Yes, I am.
Hello, good morning. How are you?
Good.
Nice to see you. Paul in the UK, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. I'm good. Very good.
Nice to see you. And Joe Bradshaw. Can I hear you, Joe? Can I see you? Are you there? Missing Joe. Okay. Okay, well, she'll come online because I saw her before, so she'll be back. So the people who are joining now, we'll just wait for another 30 seconds. My name is Scott Matheson from Working In. This is the Healthcare Jobs in New Zealand webinar. And here's Joe, and we're just waiting for Joe Bradshaw to rejoin us. Joe's our healthcare specialist in Auckland. And so, hello, Joe.
Hello, good morning.
You popped off there for a bit, but you're back.
Can you hear me all right? Yep.
Absolutely. Yep.
Brilliant. Morning, everybody.
Morning. Okay, fantastic. So look, I think we'll just it's 2 minutes past. We'll try to make this 30 minutes only, and keep it as brief as we possibly can. The webinar today really is about how you as a health professional can move to New Zealand. And we have some fantastic panelists on today. And I'll introduce them to you first with plenty of experience. First in our Auckland office is Naseem Lalazari. She's our lead immigration advisor, very critical part of the process. Naseem, can you just introduce yourself, please?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Naseem. As Scott has advised, I'm a licensed immigration advisor for New Zealand. So that means that I'm licensed with the IAA. I'm originally from Sydney, Australia, where I studied law and made the smart move and moved to New Zealand 12 years ago. I've been with Working In for 10 years, and over that time have helped thousands of individuals make the move to beautiful New Zealand. So I mentioned that I was a licensed advisor because myself and Paul both are. It's really important to be working with someone who's licensed. It means that we are stringently checked every year by the Immigration Advisors Authority. And so we're given permission by the government in order to basically provide people with advice. So because we have to go through that process annually, you're always in good hands, so long as we remain licensed.
Which you have done for the last 10 years. Thank you. And in the UK, Paul, also a licensed immigration advisor. Can you please say a few words? Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, my name's Paul Goddard. I moved to New Zealand back in 2003 with my family because I was looking for a better lifestyle, and glad to say I got that lifestyle. Enjoyed my time in New Zealand for almost 18 years. My kids grew up there. My grandson was born there. And like Naseem, I've been helping people move to New Zealand for, over 10 to 15 years now, and coming at it from somebody who's been through the process myself with my family, I think gives a bit of a unique slant on it, and something that people find very useful.
Yeah, you definitely do. You've definitely walked. You can talk the walk, is it? Yeah, you've done it, and you've helped literally thousands of people do this process. So Paul's an integral part of our team because it's not just the immigration side of it that he deals with. A lot of the people find the whole process challenging because of the logistics. What happens with my dog, with my parents, with my children, with the schools, with my clubs, etc., etc. And Paul can help us with that sort of stuff as well. And our final participant panelist is Joe Bradshaw. She's our healthcare specialist. Joe, if you could just say a few words, please.
Yes, good morning again. Yes, so I'm the International Recruitment Manager. And my entire focus is on helping health professionals like yourselves to secure a job in New Zealand. You may detect a slight English accent. I'm for those of you that are from the UK that have joined the webinar this morning. Yes, I'm from Lancashire, and I moved to New Zealand over 20 years ago now. So much like Naseem and Paul, very knowledgeable on talking about that whole journey of migration, and really understand it. So, we can offer you a really personal and connected and a story, an experience that comes from our own experience in terms of moving to New Zealand. So yes, so I'm here to help you when it comes to securing your job.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, and my name is Scott Matheson, as I said before, for those of you who joined late, and I'm the co-founder of Working In, and we've been doing this for almost 20 years, and still love it, still love helping people with their move, and we're not going to stop in a hurry. So we're delighted to have you on board. So today we're going to cover a few things. COVID, what's the situation with the borders? You may have heard that we're opening the bubble between Australia in a couple of weeks. Immigration, how does that work for healthcare professionals, and what that means in terms of speed of being able to get down here. We'll look at the sort of the catch-22, which is, how do you get a visa without a job offer? And Paul will talk to you about that. And then we'll also talk to you about the job market and what's it looking like, and how do you get a job, and how Joe can help you, and then what happens from there. So we'll really condense this as much as we can, and then tell you, hey, what's next? Because obviously immigration is a lengthy process. It is a process, you do get to the end of it, but it is a lengthy process. So just very briefly, and I'm not going to do all the talking, but I will tell you a little bit about where we are in New Zealand in terms of COVID. You may well know that there is no COVID in the community here, so we're very, very lucky. And our sympathy does go out to everybody else who's sort of caught in lockdown. We're lucky enough not to be. And in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be opening a travel bubble between Australia and New Zealand, which means New Zealanders and Australians can travel freely across the Tasman Sea without quarantine. So it's a really good start for both countries, and it bodes well for the future. The reality about New Zealand, though, is because we've done well with COVID, a lot of New Zealanders come home, our whole population has grown, and the demand for healthcare professionals is out of control. So we really do need health professionals, but there is a problem. You need to get a job offer before you can get a visa. This is called the catch-22 I mentioned before. Paul, maybe you want to describe what that means and how that works.
Yeah, I mean, the catch-22 exists because it's this situation of you need a job offer to get a visa, and then immediately if you look for jobs online, it will say, something like you need a visa to apply for this role, or only people with the right to work in New Zealand can apply for this role. And so there's this immediate brick wall, and it exists because it's the doubt and fear largely that's in the employer's mind, or the risk that the employer takes when hiring from overseas. And it's easy to understand if you put yourself in the employer's shoes. If you've got a candidate in front of you from New Zealand who can start work tomorrow, or you've got a candidate who's thousands and thousands of miles away, who you don't know if they're going to get to New Zealand, when they're going to get to New Zealand, can they get to New Zealand, will they get to New Zealand? There's so many reasons for the employer not to engage with you if you're offshore and you're just applying online. And so first thing we say is don't do that. Don't just fire CVs online. It's largely a waste of time. But the catch-22 is something that we help people remove by removing the barriers that exist between you and the employer.
Thank you. And Jo can probably talk a little bit more about how she can get health professionals in front of our clients, which are most of the DHBs. But Naseem, I think it would be helpful for you just to explain the visa process, because I'm very aware that there's people on this webinar who may have never even thought about New Zealand before, don't know how our visa system works, doesn't know that how the whole process works. So Naseem, can you just give us a very basic summary of how it works, in particular for health professionals?
Sure. So as health professionals, you're quite lucky in that the special immigration policies that are always available for you. So in terms of the normal, and I'm going to talk about the normal visa process, because obviously COVID's thrown like a wee spanner in the works, but the normal process is that based on the job offer, you apply for a temporary visa first, either under essential skills, long-term skills shortage, or a work to residence with an accredited employer. And the reason why you would do a temporary visa first is because they're always processed faster. There's slightly less requirements, they're not as stringent. Now, most people who are coming to New Zealand are obviously wanting to stay here and settle permanently. And so in that case, you'd also be applying for a residence application. So residence applications are normally applied for under the skilled migrant category or the residence from work. So depending on the type of job and your role, you might do a work to residence type of visa. Now that's the norm, and that's still available basically for anyone who's still in New Zealand, because apart from applying for residence under certain categories, everything is business as usual here. The government's allowing people that are here to continue to apply and carry on. The added difference we have at the moment because of COVID is, although we do have the Trans-Tasman, bubble that's opening up in a couple of weeks, the borders are otherwise closed and you need permission in order to enter the country. Now, to enter the country, as critical health workers, you're offered the opportunity to apply under a very, very special category that's been set up to allow for those that have a job offer in a critical health role to apply to come and enter into New Zealand and basically do their quarantine. And then once you're out, you're able to work, but then also we're able to then start the process and lodge those normal sort of business as usual visas that I was just talking about.
Yeah, and that's a really major point. Even though the Trans-Tasman bubble is opening for people from all over the world, for the rest of the world, in order to get to New Zealand, there is no visitor visa, and you will need to apply for an exception, a border exception. And luckily, health professionals will almost certainly be granted that health exemption, the border exemption, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, at which point we would apply for a work visa or a temporary visa for that individual. And then later, once they're here, they would apply for residency. Is that what, can you just confirm that's the process?
Yep, and we're doing that currently for some of the other clients that we're working with. So we had some that arrived into MIQ on Monday, but it was a public holiday here. So we lodged their work visas yesterday while they're enjoying their hotel room.
Excellent. And so, Joe, I mean, we're talking all about jobs being the most important thing here. You can't get a visa. You can't even get here without a job offer. So I know you talk to employers every day. It's your time to shine.
Thank you, Scott. So I'll just refer back to what Paul was saying about applying for jobs online. And, you know, when you apply for a job that's advertised online, often it will say that you require the rights to work in New Zealand, you require your registration, etc. And so obviously you've got those barriers in your way. So what we do is make sure that we can remove those barriers. So we work with you, we can help you get your registration in place. But we will also do an assessment with you to ensure that we know that you can actually move to New Zealand. And also what I do is I will speak to you and establish all those factors, such as what your motivation is to move, what your time frame is to move, where you want to live in New Zealand, talk to you a bit more about what your skills are. And so build up a real profile of you so that when I present you to an employer, then we've got everything in place. It's what I call personally, we have our own lingo here, what I call job ready. And so what that does is it gives you the very best chance of being considered by that employer, because what I'm doing for you is circumnavigating that process of applying directly online. I'm presenting you with all the criteria in place, but I'm presenting you directly to the decision maker with regards to that role. And so part of my job, as well as speaking to you and getting to know you and securing your job, is also working with my network in New Zealand. So that would be all the DHBs, for example. So there's 20 district health boards in New Zealand. District health boards being the equivalent of the NHS, it's our public health system in New Zealand. Also private hospitals, clinics, medical centres, really across the board. So we've got a really good network throughout New Zealand. So what my role really is to be your advocate. So you've got somebody on your side when it comes to doing that job search and actually securing you that role. So yeah, it really is critical to that process. So as Paul said, you know, applying online, you know, you may have already applied for jobs already, and generally you'll find that you won't hear back, or you'll just get an immediate rejection, because an employer, whilst they need the skills, they don't have the resource to actually deal with an overseas application. So they'll just wait for somebody local. So we basically put you in that mix. And I might add, very successfully, as Naseem just said, we've actually got 2 families in managed isolation at the moment that we've recently got a job for, a speech and language therapist and a registered nurse in aged care. And so they're very excited about getting out of managed isolation and starting their new lives here.
Thank you, Joe. That's fantastic. And just while we're talking about jobs, what is give us a feel for the job market. I mean, the job is the most critical thing in this whole process, right? So I have said there is a critical shortage, but can you, give us a little bit more depth as to, what the requirements are, what the demand is?
Yeah. Well, we hear in the media all the time, there's several articles a week generally sort of screaming out for certain skills in the industry. And so whilst I would say pretty much, across the board, registered nurses are needed in New Zealand, there's particular pockets that are more specifically in needs at the moment, such as emergency department nurses, theatre nurses, surgical, and also in aged care. And that's not to say we don't need the other types of nurses. Actually, mental health, I have to say as well, mental health is an area that we're screaming out for. It's not to say we don't need the other nurses, it's just that the demand is greater in those areas. So it's generally much easier and quicker to secure you a role in those areas where the demand is greater. So that's on the nurses. On the medical side, psychiatrists, desperately need psychiatrists, desperately need GPs. I've got heaps of opportunities for GPs in small, medium and large practices throughout New Zealand. Some great opportunities for lifestyle, making that lifestyle choice. So if we have any GPs on here, we'd love to speak to you further. Also in the allied health area as well, plenty of opportunities in allied health positions too. So yeah, it's constant, to be honest. Actually, the other one I must add is midwives, which I know I can see Scott's nodding at me thinking, is she going to mention midwives? The shortage of midwives is a real global issue. But we're lucky here in New Zealand because we know that people want to move to our country. So I'm saying, don't go to Canada, don't go to Australia, come to New Zealand, bring your midwifery skills to New Zealand.
Fantastic. And I see there's some people who are putting in some comments and asking some questions, and we'll do our best to answer those as we go. And if we are unable to do so, then we'll send you the answers later. So please go ahead and ask any questions. And I'm just, Joe, you mentioned about an eligibility assessment that the employers like to see. Paul, can you just explain what we're asking for here for people who are wanting to move, what the eligibility assessment is, and what people, I guess, receive? What's the benefit of that once they've completed it? Cool.
Yeah, it's really important. The eligibility assessment that we're talking about isn't just to clarify that you're eligible for a visa. That's obviously an important part of the process because immigration policy, as Naseem has already pointed out, is constantly shifting and changing. So you've got to be assessed against that. So that is part of it, but it's the way it works is the easiest way to understand it. So how it works is we get information from you by you filling out an online form and emailing us CVs and everything else. And then I look at that as a licensed advisor, and Naseem and her team look at it as well, and Joe looks at it as well. And so we're getting a really good, clear picture, not only of your visa options and clarifying those, but also of your employment options, and that's really important. And then once we've got all that and we've got a clear picture of how we can help you move forward and how you move forward, you then have a one-to-one consultation with me via Zoom, and that call can take as long as it takes. You know, most people do it in 40 minutes or an hour, but by the end of that call, you're crystal clear. These are your options. This is how it works. These are the steps you need to overtake. These are the hurdles you need to overcome. We'll talk about visas. We'll talk about timeframes. We'll talk about budgets, and I'll answer any questions that you've got as a single person, as a family, if you've got concerns about kids and schooling, whatever it is that you need the answers to, you get by having that assessment. So this is what puts you on track for making this move, and it is absolutely essential, because without doing that, you're just going to spin round and round in circles on the internet, getting nowhere, and you just don't have the focus and the clarity to move forward because you haven't got the answers to the questions that you've got. And so it's very much about putting somebody on track and giving them a plan to move forward.
Thanks, Paul. I think one other thing to note is that when Joe is presenting you to employers, they want to be assured that you've gone through this process. And look, as healthcare professionals, it's almost also the sun's coming in from, I'm starting to glow. I can feel the sun in my eyes. The employers like to see that you've gone through this process, because even though as health professionals you will almost certainly meet all the immigration criteria, sometimes there are other things that trip people up, and we often deal with, you know, really sad circumstances actually, where people get a long way down with their visa process only to find that for whatever reason they can't move, whether it's health or BMI or a child is sick and the New Zealand government won't support that child, or whatever reason. You know, aspects of your past might come up, and by that time you spent a lot of time and money, and it just cuts the process, it kills it. So that's an important part, but it's also really a commitment from you. I guess that's what the employer's wanting to see, and Joe will sort of back me up on that. The price is, Paul, can you remind me of the price? It's not much. It's
so we're actually doing the WAF or our full health and visa and employment assessment for £150. So in the scale of what you're going to be spending in making a move to another country, it's a tiny drop in the ocean, and it's the best investment you will make because it is what gets you moving. Every client that we've helped will say that they wouldn't have done it if they hadn't taken that first step with us.
Yeah, so 150, and then you get the assessment that we can give to the employer, and then the people that are on the webinar can spend an hour or so with you. Now, Nazim, you're the one that's doing this eligibility assessment. Can you just explain the process that you go through, please?
Yeah, so you'll see as part of that process, we ask for quite a bit of information, including CVs, not just for yourself, but your partner, if you have one and they're moving with you. And the reason for that is we need to look at the whole family unit. As Scott's mentioned, we need to be able to assess that every single person meets the specific criteria under which they will be entering New Zealand into. So if you are the principal applicant and you have the job offer as a registered nurse, then we would be assessing you under certain instructions, and then we would be looking at your partner. Do they meet all the instructions that they would need to meet in order to join you in New Zealand? And then each of your dependents as well. So it can take us some time if we've got some extra questions, or we think, oh, you sort of mentioned something there, we need a little bit more information just to make sure that we've fully understood it. But we put together a comprehensive report which will explain all the different visas that we've looked at, your pathway, and which one you will be proceeding under with that job offer.
Okay, so you just raised a little point there, which is quite interesting, about partners. So for those people that have partners, how do they get a visa and how do they get a job? The partner, assuming that the healthcare professional gets a job, gets a visa, what happens? Yeah, to the partner.
So the partner, so long as that they can prove that they meet the partnership criteria, you know, you're actually in a partnership, there's only the two of you, and you've been together for a sufficient amount of time. I can see Paul laughing. What happens is, as the partner gets an open work visa. So for the same duration as the principal. So if as a nurse you've got the 3-year visa, your partner would also get a 3-year visa, but their visa won't have any conditions on it. So they're able to work for anyone in any location doing any job. So they've got, I mean, you could choose not to work as the partner, but you have that option should you want it, which is great because it gives, more flexibility for families that are moving to New Zealand.
Fantastic. I'm a bit embarrassed here. So everybody is on the webinar, daylight saving. Our clocks have gone back recently. So I'm sitting in this room and it normally doesn't get the sun at this time, and now I'm being actually got it right in my eyes. Okay, well, I'm very now conscious that it's 7:31, so we will wrap up. But I think what we're saying here now is let's just get your eligibility assessment done for a small fee. We're not here to try and sell this. We're just saying it's a really important part of the process. Then you'll be able to talk to Paul. And then you'll be able to talk to Joe, who will put you in front of employers. Once you get that job offer, then Naseem and her team will be able to help you with the visa. That's what the agreement is that we have with most of our employers. So I'll just do a quick wrap up. I really apologize for that. Don't know what happened there. A little bit of a Zoom breakdown. But Paul, do you want to have any last words from the UK, please?
Yeah, it's just what you outlined there, Scott. I mean, that is really the route. It's the route to New Zealand is get a consultation, have a call with me to clarify your options and answer any questions. That means that then we can put you forward with confidence to Joe, and then Joe can put you forward with confidence to employers, and then Naseem can confidently do the visa for you because everything's been done properly right from the start. I mean, it is that simple in the way that the process works. The devil's always in the detail, but yeah, if you're a health professional, which you are, you're on this webinar, what have you got to lose? Just start the process.
Yeah, and I think starting now is the key, isn't it? Because it does take a while. I see a few people have asked that question. Joe, just a quick summary, please.
Yeah. Actually, just one thing we haven't talked about, and as Scott said, it can take a while, is I just want to touch on registration. So if you haven't started your registration with the relevant regulatory body, I hate that word, regulatory authority, then please do get started. You might be needing to engage with the Medical Council or the Nursing Council of New Zealand. There are registration bodies depending on what your particular area of health is. So I do say to have a look online and start that process, because it can take anything as 6 months, more than 6 months even, especially in the current environment, because you often have to get all your transcripts authorised and verified. And that process in the current situation with COVID has been taking a heck of a lot longer. And I hear it every day. There's a lot of frustrations from people in terms of how long that's taking. So it's another barrier that ideally you can remove. So please do get started with that. It doesn't prevent me talking to you. In some cases, I can get you a job offer without your registration. But it's much better to have it, or at the very least to be in process. So that would be my sort of final word on it. And I think Paul summed it up quite nicely about the steps in the process and how we confidently can help you at each step. And hopefully we'll see you on the other side here in New Zealand.
Thanks, Joe. And presumably you can help people with their registration, guide them, because if that's the first start of the process, I know it can be a bit complex. If people have any issues or queries or where to go, or
absolutely.
Just contact us through all the sort of multiple means that you can. Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you very much, Paul. And Naseem, final words, please, from Auckland, New Zealand.
I would also say, yes, please get everything started sooner rather than later. Everything always takes a lot of time. Part of what mine and the rest of the visa team's role is to make sure that you're moving through the process as well. And we do end up speaking to employers directly to explain what we need from them and when you're going to be arriving. So the more that you've done, the more homework that you've done, and the more prepared you are, the better we can be helping with that tail end of the process.
Awesome. Yeah, so I think there's some clear advice coming through from us here. Start now. Don't send your CV out yet. That's going to be a hindrance rather than a help. And look, the process will take a long time. We're here to help. But there are a lot of people coming to New Zealand. We do know it happens, and there is a lifestyle out here that's unrivaled. So look, thank you very much for joining us today, wherever you are in the world. Have a good evening. Sorry about that drop off just before. And yeah, we look forward to talking with you again, and we'll see you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.